recurring?
Yes, yes, that would be
all these numbers would be recurring.
Correct, that's why they're on.
That's why they're on there.
Yep.
Yep.
And again, we have to make sure
Right.
we're through that. So this, what you're saying, that the requirement for some paperwork within that building is 99 years.
Correct. So a very,
And that's mandated.
yes, a very, one that's very common is board minutes and agendas have to be for 99 years, or that's the arbitrary number they pick, but as long as you can keep them in the record, you have to keep them. So that we could actually digitize those and have those as records.
And you can destroy the
We'll look at,
that
like,
99 is considered digital or physical?
it's
And
just,
record.
yes.
You need to maintain a record.
Usually it's, if you can reduce it, if you have it printed at a later date, at least it's there to recreate the record. The unique one, we'll just jump down to the next one, is a Chromebook cycle. As in past, this is an additional Chromebook cycle we purchased with federal ESSER funding that now as end of life, we've already stretched it out 1 year. This is now the 5th year. So this is looking to add that as a continuous replacement cycle. The reason that it has an ask on this one in particular is, if you remember from prior years, Dr. Naylor locks in rates in March that usually are 0% or very low interest rates, which save us money. But he usually has to commit that in March. The budget's not approved until June. So some of that's the timing. So if we miss this March window, we would end up paying more in June if we did get approved. So we did approve it here at the March. So it's like if we approve it here at FPS, it will also show up for the March voting session to approve this now to purchase Chromebooks in July, August for the next school year.
When is the last ability to say up or down depending on whatever the item is?
So obviously,
May
the
or June?
last chance for this would be June. To lock in this lower rate would be March 4th.
Gotcha.
Don't we have $400,000 set aside in a tech reserve?
Correct.
So can we use that to buy these?
It's not for.
We could use it for this. This is most likely, that is if we didn't raise it and we need it, we could use it for that. Or if we had the need to add additional technology and purchase, we could do purchases on that.
The other fund.
Correct.
Okay.
So we
But
could
it's
do,
available if we need
But
it.
it is available.
yes. So this would be a 3 to 4 year lease, so we would use it the next 3 to 4 years.
the problem
then
is that's for
again,
the
3 to 4
whole district,
years.
it's not just for one of the buildings.
No, this is specifically for 3 grades.
That's what I was wondering.
And this
Okay.
is just the portion for 25, 26. So like I said, it's going to multiple years, so span this across 4 years. That's the totality of the lease agreement. They just bill us per year. So this is a $40,000.
And if I understand correctly, we can use money from general fund, we just need authorization to be able to.
And we would do that in March or?
And we need that in March.
Correct. We can add it into the budget. It just would not have, well, we also have revenue tied to it. It would have our fund balance that we have earmarked to offset that portion. And then then it would be a future time at the end of next year, if we had a surplus of funds, we could recoup that 40,000 we used to then use again and kind of replace and replenish. It's just this Chromebook cycle, if we add this, is a perpetual cycle.
Yeah.
We can also just outright buy it like we did in the past with those funds. We just have to have the means to recoup those over the next couple of years to then do the process again. So it's which
I just wish
way.
the tech companies would move that regime, so given that place.
It's just which way do we lean on how we want to continue a cycle that we just have in the budget, or do we want to use on balance and just kind of bring it back and forth every year?
Is there somewhere else that's being cut in the budget to account for a $40,000
So again,
cycle?
You saw the cuts on the prior slides; those were the cuts that were made. We make additional.
is it?
Well, I'm
Well,
just
that's
gonna
your
say,
first pass
we,
of cuts.
we kind of,
I'm not laughing.
No, you're not wrong. That's where our initial ones are, and as budgets, they're always fluid, and there's always going to be changes that we have.
If I can, I think what you're saying is if we add it to the budget, then we avoid potentially the spot of every year coming through here and approving that. So
Correct.
every March, we're going to have this issue, and if memory serves me correctly, we'll have an Apple issue. I'm trying to get a cost savings for Apple next month.
It'll be
And then
on.
maybe the next month we'll have something else. So if we do it now, then we avoid bringing it up and having this confusion each year.
It's just the funding stream is up to the board to say if
Yeah.
we want it from fund balance, with that 400,000, that's earmarked for technology, or we want it through our general budget, and then that, so it's just,
Yeah, it's easy to do either way.
it's just whichever way the board's
Maybe we should
comfortable.
go from the 400,000, that's earmarked for it.
That is
Yeah.
perfectly fine,
Okay.
but it's just on the priority because it's an additional request from priority groups, that's all. So that's-
You were gonna say something?
What?
Okay,
Please
then
keep going.
Like English?
Keep
So
going.
we're gonna come back next year though and ask the same thing.
I will ask to see if we want to use fund balance again
Yeah.
or add it to the budget next year.
Okay.
And then when we get to allocation of fund balance, I'll ask to see if we want to recoup those 40,000 we used this year for.
Okay.
So we don't, you don't have a place 40,000 created, like carved out from these cuts to add that.
We didn't get to that portion yet.
Again, I feel, the reason I keep asking these questions is because I've seen what's coming a few slides ahead, and it's a $2.4
Well, that's
million.
not even the case anymore because of how it changed already.
Yeah.
That was just.
This is fluid, this is fluid until, yeah,
But
we're not
that's
making
hard to-
we're not making the budget we're gonna sign, you know, at the end of summer. This is not what this is not what
But
we're
it's
doing.
hard to say, yeah, go ahead, let's do it, especially on something that we've got to buy this month.
Well,
when-
I think that's the misconception. We're
Right.
not saying let's do it, we're saying let's include it in the budget to review.
Right.
By no means is this set in
This is
stone.
not even close to being set in stone.
You have April, May, and June to come back and review this and say, nope, I don't like it anymore, let's take it
Yeah.
I
away.
think we thought
changes
because
to go
we
back and
lost
forth.
last month,
Yeah.
that we're more for getting pushed.
No, so
Okay.
the normal timeline is February, we have somewhat preliminary numbers. This February, due to the quick turnaround of the meeting, we did not have numbers ready, so now we're doing them all here in March. And then in April, we'll have refined numbers, and then if the agreements, I will present the packet to the full board so they can absorb it. And then in May, if there's any additional changes, we will change, and if it needs to be, if there are large changes, we present for a proposed budget to be passed by the full board. And just a reminder, last year, that proposed budget is not set in stone either. It just, by law, has to be passed and set for 20 days. The board has the opportunity to change again in June, and June is the final. So we'll refine it again if there needs to be refinement in June.
So you said you're gonna bring us more cuts in April.
We will review the budget.
Very good.
Really more cuts, maybe not.
Okay.
So the question is, Chromebook cycle, I've heard about fund balance, digital document management system, I don't think we ever had a decision on that. Is it included in the next?
Is that a
Well,
priority?
that's going to be the
I don't
whole
think-
district, right? Not just
Correct.
what comes out of the.
No, this would be used for district-wide
We
spending.
have to do that. There's a law that says we have to keep things for 90 years.
This is
But
our
let
means
me-
to digitize.
let's
This
ask-
is, oh, this is, say that again?
This is our means to digitize that backlog of all the hard copies we have. So this is the.
Now I'm confused.
So this,
I thought I asked you that.
this software takes all of our existing
Yeah.
paper copies, as many as we do not have to legally require to have just paper form, digitize them from now and future. All district will have access to this software to digitize all records that they have.
Is that what you understood, Brian?
Are they all
No,
gonna
but I
share
do
them?
now, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
All right, so how is this gonna change the move from the middle school to the high school?
Well, it impacts, that's a good question, Mrs. Young, because when we started looking at the middle school and the amount of papers and documents that are currently at the middle school and the cards that are dated back to 1930, we need to maintain those. So moving those things out of a building and moving them into a new building or here, what space do we have? This digital space provides us to get rid of everything
Of
and
course,
maintain.
you don't have to exit the middle school right away, you can leave all those papers there.
It's whether
We can leave all the papers there and continue to
digitize
have
them
them as long as
in-house,
we
we
maintain
provide
ownership of
services
the
yet.
building.
Well, I mean, and
It's just
then
we need the software
get
to be
into the
able
shredding and all
even
that.
start
stuff.
if we
Right,
want to
you
now.
can't shred it
Yeah,
until we
that's
have
right.
copies.
Well,
We
right,
can pay somebody else.
you have plenty of time to
That's
do
right.
that.
That's
Additional
another, that's
requests.
additional funds on
Yeah.
top of that.
And that's
Okay.
by next year.
Let's keep it focused here. All right. So, we're moving these forward for review.
Yep, for review.
Jeannie? For now, I mean,
Wait, we agreed with the equipment replacement, did we
That's already currently,
That's already done.
it's already done, that's already accounted for. This would be an additional 180,000 to add again for subsequent. We can obviously,
And what is that 180, what account is that in?
currently,
Yes.
if you look at your paper, it'd be 564. Yes, 564. So that includes ACTI authority funding and tuition funding. So ACTI in its entirety, so the kids' tuition rate and their debt service.
So the increase to 610 has the 180.
Correct. And we will see ACTI's new budget, because the board will have to approve that. Usually it's in April, to see what the new tuition rate and something that will be.
So the $180,000 authority funding, that is this?
That's an additional 180.
This one's a.
This would be a 300, this is an additional request, so the total would be 360. So we have the 180 from last year, and then we have 180
So
this
we're
year.
charging 180,000 every year that we did the tax increase last year. So it's 180 last year, 180 this year. That was already approved last year.
Correct.
So 180.
So we're adding another 180,000. So it will be not 180,000, it'll be 360, 360, 360, 360.
Correct.
Okay.
And the reason behind that is to ramp up slowly to get to the anticipated cost of what ACTI will be. The board has the opportunity to not do that, and then when ACTI becomes, they will need to raise taxes to get there, because it will not be in the budget, and we have not made steady increases. This is
No,
the
we're
strategy.
doing the 180 no matter what.
Correct.
That's
But-
already there.
But the difference between what ACTI approves to go out and borrow versus our 180 is what the board has to
Yeah, I
get
get
to.
that. I get that. No, what I'm saying is you made it sound like we were gonna have nothing, but we're not gonna have nothing. We're gonna have 180,000 every year.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That was last year's
So we
tax
reduced the debt
increase.
service.
Yes. So the plan last year was to have 3 years of this, pause, and see what actual maybe cleanup funding that we did with Middle School High School. At the end, it says, is it another 1%? Did we have enough to make it work? Because that's what the construction cost from the feasibility says, this is what they think its cost would be.
My issue is that everything is very different from last year about ACTI. We don't know what's going on with ACTI right now. That's my.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you have Sharon Perry quit. We have.
Yeah, but we'll
Dan
cover
Mao
that.
won't give us any money unless we go to the mall.
Well, no. That's not gonna happen.
Well, I'm not.
He doesn't get to decide unilaterally, whether we get money or not. No, that's not what's gonna happen.
I
So,
think ACTI is not going away.
ACTI is definitely not going away. We will find a director. We will expand ACTI from 7 to 14 programs. We will build a building, and we've got to find some way to pay for it. I mean, it's absolutely shameful that we're the only county in the Commonwealth that doesn't have a really ACTI for students, for a technical program for students.
We
It is.
do have an existing ATCI program.
ACTI, we do.
And what
And
is
it's
the budget for that?
Seven programs.
Okay.
And
So there's something that's already there
There-
servicing.
Sure.
And we have vision, and we
Sure.
want to see it grow and all that.
Sure.
So the thing I'm concerned about is that it's kind of like at a standstill at the moment.
well, no,
And,
not really.
Hold on. It's, you have some issues that are going on that makes me feel not so confident to take another 180,000 and put it into the 360 and keep putting the money without a clear sense of direction. And I'm just asking that, do we go to the taxpayer and say, hey, look, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna make it work. We do have a vision. We are gonna do something, but there's not a clear
There is.
plan.
The authority is currently
Yeah.
looking at land. We have 4 plots of land that we're looking at. They're gonna put out 4, we're gonna whittle it down to 2, and within the next, 2 months, the ACTI, JOC is going to make a decision on that land. And then after that, you know, we're going to have a director. What we come up with what solution that may be, we don't know, but in another month, we'll know. Yes, we've had a step backwards, but we're gonna go right ahead and keep going forward, because that's how important this school is, this program is.
There's no definite that it's, I mean, it's not, that it's not important, okay? I understand how important it is, but until we get ourselves to a place where we can really say, hey, we can really do this, we can justify it, we can go to the community, we can say, hey, you're making this investment. So I'm just saying that maybe we should just pause until all the stuff comes together, what you're talking about, and then that gets to a place where we can really say, ah, now that makes sense.
So let me just add to that before we go too far. That's correct, but the problem is the ACTI cannot move forward without our commitment. If we do not commit and say we have funds allocated for them to proceed, they cannot proceed. That is true. They can't borrow money unless we approve it and say we have the money to support their borrow. If we have no money to support the borrow, they cannot borrow, which then they cannot proceed. So there's the commitment level. We have to commit that we have funds for them to borrow to then do a future project. They're
Believe me, I think the smartest thing would be cut ACTI out and make it its own school, but that's not the situation we're in.
Did you guys see the land options?
But we did not. We will see them, and we will see them. That's coming up. And look, in another month, we will have a director. We will have land. We will have everything you think we don't have. This is not a process that's going to happen overnight, but we have to say that we are committed, as Tom has said, that we are committed to this school, and we are going to, you know, pay our share to get this up and going. That's what we have to do now. Because if we show sort of like we're not going to, like Tom said, then other schools might look and say, okay, you know, Fairfield might say, well, you know what, Lewistown's not really in all, you know. Then, you know, same way with Conowagha Valley, or same way with Gettysburg. None of these schools are all in. So Conowagha might just say, well, you know what, the heck with it. We'll just keep adding on to our school, you know, and maybe they won't take our students because they have more students who want to just, you know, that can fill those seats. They won't take our students. Same with Gettysburg, right? Those two schools are the largest schools in the county. You know, without those two schools, then if they go back out, then really our kids have no choice whatsoever. So we've got to decide, I think, today that we're either going to back this or we're not, because I don't think we take a pause.
But we are putting money aside.
We're already backing with 180.
Right. But you don't understand how much money we're going to have to put in, you know. Now granted, we don't either quite yet, but it's going to be, you know, good money. And we should be prepared for that, just like we have prepared with the cyclical plan.
So let's,
we should raise the sum so we have that money when the time comes, because the time is coming.
But why can't we, until that time comes, until we have a firm plan that all 5 school boards are in agreement with, why can't we leave that money in the taxpayers' pockets?
So
and not
Because
take that from
if
them
we
every
wait till
year?
that moment, then we might have to hit taxes at 3% if we want to stay in. We don't want to do that. That's why we get a little now, so we don't have to get a huge one later. Otherwise, we might as well just bow out.
Ultimately,
That's
the
what
way
we should do.
we talked about it was 3%, whether that happens now or over time. So
That was 3% when it was a $40 million project. From what I hear, it's at least a $60 million project.
Well, of course, look at inflation. I mean, that's why we should not slow this
That's
down.
mine, it's 12 years of payments.
It went from 40 to 60, it's went
Go
up
ahead.
50%.
Can you control the,
we just have to have one person talking, so that we
I'm
can follow the
sorry.
No, I'm
conversation.
talking about them.
Oh, okay.
You have to
Just-
know why I do.
The problem we face is we can either do it slow and steady, as we've done in the past with the Coast, or when the time comes, the board will have to raise several percent to get this to fruition. If the board and this finance committee saying, I'm willing to wait 3 years, 2 years, to then raise taxes to pay for this, that's well and good. But that's the reality we're gonna, it's,
Right.
Brian says, it's moving forward, how well are we gonna be prepared?
One thing, I think, with everything else we said, we could move it forward for review and cut it out later. I would recommend, for the sake of just discussion and moving forward, we keep it in and we move it forward for review from everyone else. That way it's there, it's listed, and if we want to take calls on it later, we can take calls on it later.
That's being disingenuous. We have to make decisions.
All right, so within this, before we set this in stone, we have to make a decision, all right? I think we should do it just because we should signal to everybody that this is the future. And tell everybody that in 3 years, we're not gonna come back and try to make a decision, or either we're gonna raise 3% or we're gonna bow out. Because I guarantee you're gonna hear a lot more people screaming at 3%, 2 years down the road. And then it's gonna make it even more difficult. And then we're back to where we were.
We're not necessarily saying wait X number of years. It's just ACTI, especially in the last week, seems like they're in a very uncertain position. I mean, you have.
It seems that way,
our
but it's not.
Our state representative, who is one of the, who whether we like it or not, is a big person that is in the government and can help with funding.
So you mean to tell me he's gonna throw hissy fit because we didn't choose to get a building that's in your county rather than build it in that county?
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm saying it doesn't sound like he's currently on board with the way that ACTI is going, and is looking to do it in a cheaper way. I think that the uncertainty of we're supposed to have this A-list director that everybody gave rave reviews about, and now that's not happening, and that's going to be. I mean, you guys had to open up twice to just get her, right? You had to reopen the position.
We did. It is
so
difficult to find somebody for that position. There are not many qualified people for it.
It is. So
We'll
what I'm
find
saying
one.
is, in something we see in the line graph that Tom shows us almost every meeting, is that in the last 10 years, we never see a year where there's no tax increase. And what I'm saying is, why not let the money in the taxpayers' pockets now? When there's a period of uncertainty, why do we need to hold on to that for a year and not let them happen?
Well, we already do 180, and pick it back up next year.
I think we just need to keep this thing going. I think we just need to say, and we'll start with Eugene. Do we want to move it forward, or do you want to sit on hold? What are your thoughts?
I just think we've had so many changes in the last week that I'm not clear. I know we have the 180 that we, at base at least, that we're doing every year. I'd like to see what's gonna be happening in the next few weeks. It's just been very odd, the things that have happened in the last week.
It has not been odd.
Well,
There are setbacks.
Maybe
We
you,
will
maybe
overcome
not to
them.
you because you go to these meetings, but to us,
Right.
everything just seems to be
We will
falling
overcome
apart.
them. We will overcome them. We will overcome them.
I think there's a lot of information that's out there by people that are not involved.
Not involved. I think there's a lot of people talking out one side of their mouth, and they shouldn't be. And that's just the way it is.
So we're talking a lot right here.
We are.
We want to move it forward. Brian, yes, no?
I'll move forward.
Okay. Nick?
I think that with this current state of things, that this would be the year to pass.
I'm in agreement with that.
All right, so you guys.
Sometimes you have to have courage in an election year. And I know you all want to be back here, but sometimes you gotta have courage to do the right thing. ACTI is the right thing. Now, when we get down to this in a few years, then you guys can come back and tell them why they're getting a 3% tax raise rather than 1.
Well, Brian did say it got nothing to do with an election year. I'm not up for reelection. What it has to do with
There are
is the
others that are.
taxpayers are sick of being, of the tax and spend that's went on for
Tax and
a decade.
spend.
It's
Tax and
constant.
spend?
Okay.
It's constant.
You want to have a conversation, you guys can have
You're
it.
right. I
another time.
apologize.
All right, let's please keep moving.
So this is the total budget. Each committee member got a breakdown of these next two slides. The only thing I'm going to highlight here is the 6.1 million. So the 6.1 million is what we have currently in fund balance for middle school, high school. when we talk to the accounting portions of that, the best accounting practice is to move that to capital reserve to pay our contractors for the portion we set aside. So with this transfer, what I would have is a recommend to transfer up to 6.1 million on an as-needed basis to pay the contractors what we earmarked to pay them. So this transfer would have a no more than 6.1. If we end up not using all of our contingency funds, that would be less than the 6.1, which we would only transfer as needed. So if there was an argument's sake to say it was $6 million flat, the 100,000 would stay in the general fund, would not get transferred, and would be back in fund balance. What I don't want to do is have more money go into capital reserve. This is exactly a one-to-one is 6.1 million as of the last audit in fund balance for middle school, high school. This would say up to that amount to transfer and only pay the amount that is charged to us by those contractors.
So you're saying transfer it over as it happens, not
Yes.
one lump sum?
But I want to have the transfer worded that I can do that and not request every month for an additional transfer to say an up to amount, and on an as needed.
As payments are required.
All the payments will be approved, but I don't want to have an approval, standalone approval for this. It would be worded that we can approve it to match one-to-one with the payments that are going out the door.
And this is invoices that are coming in for the middle school, high school project. We're
Correct.
not just taking a lump sum of money and moving it into capital reserves for other capital improvements.
No, this
around-
is specifically earmarked, this is the way fund balance works, it's specifically earmarked and assigned for middle school, high school to pay those contractors. When I talked to our accounting professionals, they said to remove it from general fund to capital reserve to pay that capital reserve because it's technically a capital reserve project. It is a capital improvement, so it is the best interest to move it there, to pay it there instead of general fund, because it's not technically a general fund. We just housed it in general fund until the point of this time now we're transferring. So it will be a no more than 6.1, and it will be, we expended all 6.1 for payment there.
And you'll let us know each month what you've moved over?
That will be in Gil's presentation, and we want to have a subcategory to identify that we can. But that's why this number, the total expenditures, does not include, so it's only 42.8 because it doesn't include the 6.1 transfer, because that's going to be an as needed and it's technically fund balance. It's not it's an expense, but it's not, it shouldn't be shown to show 48 million. That would be, wouldn't show it accurately, I should say.
And we don't want to move it all into fund balance at the beginning to avoid exactly what Nick said earlier, meaning it's not all in there, so whatever's left, if there's anything left, now we have to use it for capital reserve. We transfer it as it's needed so that it stays in general.
Earmarked.
Correct.
Gotcha.
It's just, I have to show it within the budget because that's how the state requires us to do it. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware and understands that, because it's a unique scenario to us this year. And it will look like the budget's 48 million, but in essence, it's only that 42 because of the way it has to be shown on a PD document. Everybody's on, just want to make sure. It's kind of
Good.
So revenue, as I explained, these are the increases I showed on the prior slide. This is just showing it in its local, state, and federal portions. Any questions on that? Like I said, you have more of a breakdown in your packets on those. But it's basically the slide I had